Hi, my name is Jeff Agano, and welcome to the Harpin on Rugby preview show. Joining me today to look ahead to Saturday's match at the Aviva is someone back for his 24th Harpin cap. Warm welcome to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Evening, Jeff. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Thanks for coming on. Well,
Thank you.
just before we get to the main match, there was a game that earlier on today, and it was tough for everyone to get to see it, but we were all trying to catch snippets of it as we went along. Leinster were hosting Chile over at Donnybrook. What did you get to see?
Yeah, like most people, it's difficult at 2:00 on a Friday. But in fairness to Leinster, it was nice to offer Chile the chance to play. So yeah, the snippets I did see during sneak peeks at work was, it was obviously a very young team for Leinster. And we had a few guys getting a chance from AIL, like Conal Boomer, who seems to, he took his chance well. And I think Charlie Hector got man of the match. He's sort of continuing his form from the Irish under-20. So it was a fairly good win for Leinster. Chile did look good in a lot of the qualifying matches. I wouldn't be 100% sure how strong that Chile 15 team was compared to their normal. But look, it would have been nice to be there, having a few beers on a Friday afternoon in Donnybrook, but it wasn't to be. But I'd like to see more of these matches going forward.
Absolutely. It reminded me, from what I could see of it, it reminded me of those old British and Irish Cup matches when it was men against boys, but the boys still won. It was a very young Leinster team. There was Rhys Ruddock and was there, and there was a couple of older heads on the team, but there was a lot of the future there as well. And Tector had a great match. Cormac Foley scored a wonder try. But I think as always with a lot of these scores, it's 40-3. It's the 3 that's impressive, because Chile were there to play rugby and they were throwing it around a bit. And but you could see the defense, even with this young team, the defensive systems were there, and they were keen right from the kickoff to hold them out. And they were as strong in the 80th minute as there were in the first minute. In fact, ironically, there was a bit of a bust up in the very last minute, or you could call it a Donnybrook if you really wanted to, right at the very end. That's how physical it was and how difficult we were making it for Chile with the ball. So it was good to see. It was good to see this team doing so well, So it was a good outing, and it's starting to get us back in the Leinster mindset of things with the matches coming up,
Yeah, against Glasgow, yeah. And I think one player you mentioned there was Cormac Foley. 9 scoring tries like that seemed to be a bit of a thing in the past, and that's a couple of times he's done it now. I think he did it against Munster in that end of that April game back in Lansdowne where Munster were poor. So he definitely shown an eye for a break, because just with modern defenses these days, you don't see it as much as you used to. That sort of 9 being able to make a good line break like that. So absolutely, he definitely shown some skills there.
I was excited to see that 9-10 combo, because it looks like it could be a future for Leinster down the line, and they really came up trumps. Okay, so we're going to get on to the main feature. Our Harpin match this week, as you can see up above there, is Ireland against Australia. It's the final match of the 2022 Bank of Ireland Autumn Nation Series. It's taking place at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, November 19th, kicking off at 8 p.m. So it's a late kickoff. It's being shown on Virgin Media 2 and Amazon Prime. Ireland named their full match day squad on Thursday. So why don't we get to Harpin on it, starting with the back line. And as you can see there, the backs, you got the fullback Hugo Keenan. On the wings, it's Jimmy O'Brien and Mac Hansen. The centers are Stu McCluskey and Gary Ringrose. And the halfbacks are Jemison Gibson Park and skipper Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, I suppose the key one is moving Mac over from the left to the right. We spoke after the South African game when McCluskey had to go off and Ireland had to rejig their backline, how important Jimmy O'Brien was in filling that sort of James Lowe role of that left boot as a bit of an option B to relieve some pressure. And I think we'll see more of that today, or I should say tomorrow, against Australia. So it's exciting. There's a bit of newness about the back line with Hansen. Even though he's been there a little while now, he's still relatively new to the setup. Obviously, McCluskey is getting another chance, which is great to see. And ideal to play him again. We know what Bundy can do. I know Robbie's got a bit of a knock, so it's good to play McCluskey. And obviously Jimmy O'Brien is another opportunity against a top level team to play. So yeah, I like to look at the back line. I think that we'll go on to the forwards in a minute, but I think the the solidness of the consistency for the forward pack will give those backs an opportunity to play some ball against Australia.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was some introduction to Test rugby for Jimmy O'Brien, just looking up and seeing Joseph Gibson Park fizzing a pass back to him in his own 22 and having to get his left boot to it. But he did really well, and he's earned a shot. I understand a lot of people are saying, Balakone may feel aggrieved he got left out, but he's got a good run. He's had 160 minutes. He's played every minute of the series so far. And, a lot of these same people say, why don't we try out more players? So this is kind of what they're doing. And Balakone hasn't, he's still there in the mix for going down the road. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. It's a really good opportunity for Jimmy. Okay, so we'll look at the forwards now. And in the front row, there's Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong. Second row, Tyke Byrne and James Ryan. And back row, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Veer, and Kylan Doris.
Yeah, as you said, as we touched on, there's nearly not a whole lot to analyze about the forwards. Apart from a couple of injuries, Kelleher maybe would he have gotten into this game? Probably would. The fact that Dan has played so many minutes, but not to be. The forward pack picks itself. I'm sure there's one or other two players, like I mentioned, Kelleher and Ian Henderson. He would have liked to have tried out to get some minutes, but it's a formidable unit. It's a very consistent selection by Farrell. So it is the winning of the game, against that Australian 8. So that, he'll be looking for them to give the platform to the back line. So yeah, it's been analysed to that pack. So I think if they play to what they've normally played, it'll I'm sure it'll bring some good fruition to it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's almost our prime pack there, with the possible exception of Ian Henderson, the way of getting him into there somehow. But that's almost as good as we can do at the moment. Okay, so we'll move on to our bench now, and it reads Rob Herring, Cian Healy, Finlay Beam, Joe McCarthy, and Jack Conan are the other forwards, and then you've Craig Casey, Jack Crowley, and Bundy Aki. Yeah, well,
it's there's a mixture of real cap experience there in Healy, Bundy Aki, and Jack Conan, and obviously maybe Finlay Beam. But when you look at Casey, Crowley, and McCarthy going to come on, it'll give them good minutes against quality opposition. How many minutes they get would be interesting to see. Obviously, Gibson Park hasn't played a lot of rugby, as we know, all year, so I can expect him to get a long shift in this game, and we'll see if Crowley gets more than 3 minutes at the end. Which isn't ideal. I'd like to see him get more time, but there's a strong possibility that it'll be Sexton and on the 70-something minute again coming off. That would be the only downside. But look, Andy Farrell's in charge of selection. You have to go with what he says. But it's a good mix of experience and youth. It's a pity maybe some other loose head wasn't given opportunity. I have nothing against Cian Healy. He's a legend. We love him to death at Leinster. But I think somebody like Ed Byrne or Jerry McLaughlin, who I thought did well in a few games, and he did well in the South Africa game for Munster. I think there's an opportunity maybe lost there that one of those two guys didn't get a chance against Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I just going by the teams Farrell's been picking, for the past year. I just think he wants to play his best team in these matches and as much as you want. That's the way he's looking at it. I mean, I'm with everyone on trying players and stuff. I would agree. I would tend to agree, but I think Andy's he's got his own focus on what he wants to do. And for these matches against the Australians, the New Zealands, South Africa's, France's, whatever, he's going to play that. He's going to play that best team, and you do get a sort of advantage of that as well, because they get used to playing together as well. And Sexton runs the show, and everyone gets used to playing with him. And like you say, if it comes to the 70th minute, if we're way ahead at that stage, then that's well and good. But if it's close, you'd want to hold on to him and bring him to those final minutes. So we'll just have to see how the game goes. Okay, so moving on to our opposition, which is of course the Wallabies. and I'm trying to point there to see where the Wallabies, the logo is going to be there later on. Hopefully my graphics department will get this right. They'll put the names up at the bottom of the screen, so I won't read them out, but if you're listening to the pod, it's also in the program notes. The Wallabies have had something of a roller coaster so far in this tour. There was a handy enough win over Scotland, followed by two very different 1-point defeats in Paris and Florence, respectively. What do you make of their squad?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's strange. We've spoken on the pod before about world rankings and what they mean and what they don't mean. Like, as somebody grew up watching the Australians, if you were to say it's seed 1 versus seed 8, you wouldn't have thought it was Ireland 1, Australia 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
Australia's consistency over the last few years. You even mentioned there in the few weeks that they, had a decent win against Scotland. Ran France right to the last, only for Peno to get a try 2 minutes or 3 minutes before the end, and then they made 12 changes against Italy, and that came home and bit them in the ass. You know what I mean? And we all know Italy got their win over Wales in the Six Nations, and they've been fairly competitive. And the URC with Benetton and even Zebra have had some good performances. So the days it's taken so many changes. I believe we've spoken before about how cohesion and consistency in international rugby is key, and that sort of didn't help Australia in that game, but so it was a good win for Italy. So, but I think that's been Australia over the last 3 or 4 years. It'll be more of the team, I think, that will give us the game than the team that flunked against Italy that we'll see on the weekend, because they're pretty much relatively back to their full team. Definitely the back row, Holloway, Hooper and Valentini is an excellent back row. Holloway is very good in the line out. There'll be an interesting matchup with Peter O'Mahony there. I think Valentini is their star player this year. I think he arguably could have been shortlisted for World Player of the Year. He's had an outstanding season, big ball carrier, and it'll be good head to head with Caelan Doris there. And McCluskey will be running down that channel as well. So they have a couple of old heads at halfback, in Nick White and Bernard Foley. I don't know what the average age between those two and Johnny Sexton will be, but it could be the oldest set of halfbacks playing a game in a while.
Gibson Park's the baby of the
Gibson Park is the baby.
Yeah.
But they're back to full strength, so it'll be interesting. They've 2 guys in it, the second row. They've only got 2 caps each, so that's an area Ireland will try and challenge and test him in the line out. Maybe that's why Holloway has been playing in the back row. Nick Frost is a young fella. He's only got a couple of caps. And Caedron Neville is an interesting one. He was meant to make his debut way back when Michael Huber was meant to make his debut. And he just got a bit of a knock at the time in camp way back in 2012. And he made his debut for Australia at the ripe old age of 33. So it's an interesting storyline for him, the way the arc has come. So I think Ireland will fancy getting something at the line out, and maybe O'Brien with the kicking game as well. That's why we've picked him. We might see ourselves going for the line outs more than we've seen before. That it's an area Ireland could get at Australia, because they've inexperienced locks, and their back row generally only Holloway's a target. So that's an area Ireland will fancy their chances of getting at Australia.
Absolutely. And according to the stats, they're the most of all the top tier teams. They're the most penalized at the moment. So we saw that against Fiji last week. They're giving up a lot of penalties, and so we could get that again this week. And also, we were talking about the game being close towards the end. They do have a couple of names on the bench. That Tongan Thor and Mr. Will Skelton will be reintroduced to a lot of the players who got to meet him there last season. So it could be a bit of a bruiser, especially towards the end. So there's definitely, they did really well against France, I have to say now. I mean, whatever happened last week, they really gave the French a run for the money, and they needed a worldly try at the end to pinch it off them. So they really could give us a game. I mean, we won't be underestimating them, and we really want to push for that win.
I think the key for Australia, as you mentioned, is 2 things: is discipline. I think they average a card a game. Or under Andy Farrell, we're like 1 every 5 games. And the other issue Australia have, which are the worst out of the top tier, the top 8 tier teams, is slow starts. I think they average 3 points for the first 20 minutes, half an hour in those games. Where Ireland are averaging 7 to 10. So I think if Australia are going to win in Dublin against a team that that's in good form, they're going to have to start well. They're really going to have to start well. If the scoreboard is in Ireland's favour, that's in the first 20 minutes, half an hour, and we will, as we know, we've spoken about Ireland starting fast, really from the get-go. So like if the score is tight after 20 minutes, then I would say this will go all the way to the end at 70. So I think it's Australia's slow start and their discipline is two key areas where Ireland will get. I think Ben O'Keefe is the referee.
Yeah.
That I would say the Australians should be used to him from Super Rugby. So there's should have no complaints or no post-match videos from the coach wondering about the referee's interpretation.
What coach would do that? Seriously, no coach would put up post-match videos. Are you mad?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, you mentioned the referee there. I've got him up on the screen there. Ben O'Keefe from New Zealand is the ref, and then you can see the assistants and the TMO. The weather forecast for Dublin on Saturday evening, it's patchy clouds, but because it's an 8 o'clock kickoff, it's getting cold in the evenings now. 5 degrees Celsius, it'll be a bit chilly there. About 25% chance of rain. Bit of a wind going southeast, but not too much. So that's how that's looking. But now it's time to put our heads on the block and give a few predictions. Tom, maybe if you can give us a margin for our feature match, the Wallabies, and just who you think is going to win some of the others.
I think Ireland will win, and I think we'll win by 7 to 10 points. I think Australia can be got at the two wingers that they have got wheels, but looking at Super Rugby, they have been showing up in defence. So I think if Ireland can get some forward momentum from the pack and just create those crisp set piece moves or even moves in open play to create overlaps, I think we can score against them. So yeah, I think Ireland by more than a score, sort of 7 to 10 points. I think we're just too much for the Australians this time.
Yeah, and just from the other matches, what do you think? Where do you think are the winners there?
Well, I think South Africans will probably break their losing streak that they've had. Though I think Italy will be full of beans after beating Australia. So that won't be that easy. It'll be another bruiser. A bit of a toss-up. It's hard to know with Scotland and Argentina. Scotland desperately needs something after. I thought they did well against New Zealand. I didn't think New Zealand was great. But I'd go for a marginal Scottish win there. And the other real big one is obviously England, New Zealand. It's interesting. Eddie Jones has picked players, we would say in their positions, Simmons at 6, but I think they're leaving the gate open for New Zealand to really target the England line out. Brodie Retallick is back, and I think the last time he was there, he stole something like 5 lineouts, and I think Eddie's selection has left the door open again for New Zealand to really go after the English lineout. So I'm going for New Zealand win there purely because I think. I think you have to respect the opposition, and I just think they left that gate too far open for New Zealand to pick off that English line out again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right there. Okay, listen, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Tom for joining me today. Thanks, Tom. And everyone, just be sure and enjoy the match wherever you are. If you want to get involved in the conversation during the match, we're covering it on Mastodon these days. So why don't you join us there before heading to the Facebook page to leave your final thoughts. And we'll share all the best comments on our wrap-up pod this Sunday evening. But in the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.
Cheers, Chef.